Hey, it's Juck. Let's get it. And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback. The truth is Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those. You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country. Let's get it. And welcome into Juck on Bucks, the weekend show. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. Really appreciate you. A rainy Northeast Ohio Saturday and a big weekend for Juck on Bucks. We had a great first 2 days over at Menace to Sports, and I'll admit, guys, I was nervous. I was really nervous. Almost as nervous as when I first started like 6 months ago, putting stuff out here on the internet. You never know how you're going to be received by a new audience. You know, they're not familiar with me over there. And that Menace to Sports crowd, that's a tough crowd now. You don't want to mess with them. You definitely don't want to be on the wrong side. And I think that for the most part, the Menace Army who checked out the show had positive things to say. One thing that's interesting over there on Menace to Sports that we don't have at Juck on Bucks is they got a lot of haters, man. Zach's a lightning rod, as you know, and the Menace Army loves him because of that. And the haters hate him just as hard as they love him. So they're popping in on little Juck on Bucks, hating on my stuff. Like, what did I do, bro? So that'll take some getting used to. As you know, I'm very active in the comments section. I probably respond to about 75% of those comments. I read them all. So even though the show's not live, my morning show, if anybody has anything to say, pop in the comments section, please. Happy to talk to you in there. One guy in particular, very bothered that I was not covering practice. There's a reason I don't cover practice. I'm not a beat reporter, but that's why I have Dillon Davis on. Dillon Davis, my guy from the Delaware Gazette, been covering the Buckeyes Ryan Day's entire tenure, and I think his perspective is very valuable. And I just had another conversation with Dillon today. We talk about the first couple of days of practice, and he's becoming kind of a regular here at Juck on Bucks, and I like that a lot. So that conversation will be towards the end of the show today. Dillon, very well respected on the beat. One of the few guys I hear get called on every one of those press conferences to ask a question. And Jim Knowles had a press conference on Friday, and I absolutely love listening to Jim Knowles. You just get the impression that this guy would rather be anywhere else, and most especially, he'd rather be in a dark room figuring out ways to beat an offense. Like, that's just, he strikes me as just a mad scientist that wants to just be doing that all day long. And his responses are quite interesting. But there was one that really, really caught my eye, my ear. So they were talking to him about CJ and Sonny, when we know for one that Sonny's been taking reps with the ones. He said, don't read into that. They're bracketed. They're neck and neck. But they were talking about getting pressures. And he was saying how talented both of them are at pressuring the quarterback. And Austin Ward, I believe, said, that sounds like a bit of a Jack discussion. Now, before I go any further, this is not me arguing for the Jack. I get it. Everybody's tired of that conversation. They don't want to hear any more about it. But he did say something interesting about the Jack that made me think about something, and I got to bring it to you guys. So he said that not only does he not want to play the Jack with this personnel, he thinks he may actually go the other way. So instead of taking a defensive lineman off the field to bring the Jack in, he may go with 5 defensive linemen on some rush packages. And he said, ultimately, what I want to do is win. And I think that's best for this personnel. Essentially, this is a bad move to remove one of our defensive linemen to put one of those linebackers in the Jack role. And this really got me thinking. So the Buckeyes were big time after Justin Hill in the recruiting process. They wanted him bad, and they wanted him for the Jack position. And there was a moment when Jim Knowles, James Laurinaitis, Larry Johnson, and Tim Walton all went down to Winton Woods High School, and they sat down with Justin Hill and his family and showed him how they intended to use him in the Jack position. And our assumption, and the assumption from pretty much everybody who follows recruiting is that Ohio State this year on defense was intending on incorporating that jack position in a lot so that they could show Justin Hill proof of concept, what this defense is going to look like with the jack position. It's also been said by many that the Buckeyes are continuing to recruit Justin Hill, trying to flip him from Alabama. I never thought there was a chance at all because I don't think that he picked Alabama based on the wolf versus the jack position. I think that represented an easy excuse for him, and he chose Alabama because he thought Alabama was cool and that's where he wanted to go. Sayonara. But here's what's really interesting. Were they actually planning on playing the jack position this season, a season where they're contending for a national championship just to get a recruit in the class of 2025? When the defensive coordinator himself said that he doesn't think it's the right way to go. You have to assume that they were, because had they gotten the commitment from Justin Hill and then not used the position, he would have flipped 100%. I find that pretty incredible. So that's the question for you guys. Were they planning on playing the jack just to show proof of concept to a recruit in 2025, even though the defensive coordinator doesn't want to? Or if they got that commitment, were they still planning on not playing the jack and just roll the dice that he would have stayed committed throughout that? I find that really interesting. So weigh in on that, guys. Tell me what you think. But do want to give a shout out to a couple of our new members. Eric from Kokomo, the Big Easy, Fisherman, and Troy, official Juck on Bucks members. And if you're interested in joining that membership program, in the description of this video is the link there. You can check out everything you get. But what's not listed in there that I just found out is our new sponsor, Columbus Apparel Company. When they're finished with their Juck on Bucks line that they're designing right now, they're going to do Juck on Bucks shirts, Buckeye shirts, and all other stuff, long sleeves, crew necks, everything. When they're done, they're going to be sending out a free t-shirt to every one of those new members, all the members, not just the new ones. They're also going to be supplying me with 20 free t-shirts a month to give away. I don't know how we're going to go about that yet. Let me know if you guys got some ideas. That's a lot of shirts, but maybe a trivia question or something. But thank you to Columbus Apparel Company. These guys are awesome. Official sponsor of Juck on Bucks. They got a sick logo, which is why I chose them. Also, I like an apparel company. I think that's cool. But they do a lot of printing there. Anything you guys want. Bulk t-shirt printing. They do car wraps, all sorts of stuff. And I get a sweet discount. If you want that discount, email me at Juck on Bucks. I'm allowed to share that with anybody I want. And they're an awesome company. So let's support them over at Columbus Apparel Company. Thank you all. All right. So out of Kentucky, the NCAA is stripping Kentucky of 10 wins, putting them on 2 years probation, and they got to pay a huge fine because the 2021 team, a couple of those players on that team were working fake jobs at the hospital and receiving money for those fake jobs, which made them ineligible. So they are vacating every win that one of those guys played in, which turns out to be 10 wins. And it includes their postseason game, which was the Citrus Bowl against Iowa. The NCAA also said that it found that no athletic department staffers knew or should have reasonably known about the violations. What's that tell us? I think it tells us as we look forward to the Stallions' advanced scouting situation at Michigan, that a lot of people say Harbaugh didn't know, he was a rogue actor. Well, it tells us that the NCAA is definitely vacating wins. And it also tells us that whether or not you knew, if you should have known, they're going to punish you accordingly. So if you should have known, they're going to punish you the same way as if you did know. So whatever that means in this situation with that staff being gone, I don't know. But we definitely know that they are vacating wins. And when I asked you guys what you thought would be a punishment that would make you happy, because I said nothing retroactively is really going to make me happy, make me feel any better. A lot of you guys said vacating all the wins from the time Stallions started the scheme up through the national championship. But I don't know if they'll take it that far because Stallions wasn't there the second half of the season. At any rate, interesting development, I think. And we definitely know that they are vacating wins. And we got another, by the way, what they did at Kentucky, not even in the same stratosphere as getting an unfair advantage on the playing field. What happened up there with Stallions? Not even in the same stratosphere. And they took 10 wins for that. I don't know. Getting a little interesting. If I was a Michigan fan, I'd be sweating this a little bit, I think. I think I just might be. And they should be. But I was thinking this the other day. Now picture this if you would. This lineup. Josh Simmons at left tackle, Donovan Jackson at left guard, Carson Hinsman at center, Tegra Shabola at right guard, Josh Fryer at right tackle, G. Scott and Jelani Thurman, your two tight ends, Travion Henderson, Dallin Hayden, James Peoples working in, Devin Brown at quarterback. Defense stays the same except no Caleb Downs. Pretty big blow right there. How does that lineup look to you? Where's that team rank? What's the anticipation heading into the season? Because that is what the lineup looks like without any of the transfers. The mega transfer class that the Buckeyes brought in, the transfer class that has received all this attention. How hyped for you in that hypothetical scenario for this season as we enter it? Where does that team rank? I think it enters the season as maybe the third or fourth odds-on favorite, right behind Texas or Oregon or both of them, or maybe even in front of them, without any of this vaunted transfer portal class, the one that everybody accuses Ohio State of loading up to try to buy a championship. I think that is still an exciting team. I think we're still pumped, and I think it still enters as a top 5 team to win the national championship. Curious to know what you guys think. That just crossed my mind this morning. Like, what does this team look like without any of the transfers? It's still pretty damn good, man. It's still really, really good. It's all about the seniors, man. All about the seniors for me. And I think that's what's going to be the difference here. That and the chipster and 3 years in Jim Knowles. We got another story out of Michigan. Dude. Mel Tucker is suing Michigan State. Mel Tucker from Cleveland, a guy who worked as a defensive coordinator with the Buckeyes. He was the co-DC of the Browns at one point. When he got that job at Michigan State, I was rooting for him. They signed him to an enormous contract. It was way more than he was worth. It seemed really strange at the time. And things weren't going great to start off his tenure at Michigan State. Well, then he made the mistake of bringing Brenda Tracy in to talk to the guys. Brenda Tracy, a sexual assault survivor who a lot of people think is a total grifter, goes around and gives these kinds of speeches, claimed on a phone call with Mel Tucker that he took it to another level she didn't want to go to. He claims it was totally mutual and they were having an affair. Then she went and filed a complaint with Michigan State, who then turned around, suspended Tucker, and had a hearing about the suspension. He chose not to come. He cited a severe medical condition or some other thing as to why he couldn't come. So Michigan State fired him. They still owed him $80 million. Crazy. A lot of people thought that that was a convenient way for Michigan State to get rid of that buyout. Didn't look like he was turning the program around. They definitely overpaid him to begin with. They realized it, and he gave them an out. And that's exactly what he did. He gave him an out. In the lawsuit, Tucker's lawyers allege that his constitutional rights to due process and equal protection were violated based on an improper, biased, and sham investigation designed to fire him. In the 75-page lawsuit in a federal court in Michigan, Tucker claims to have experienced severe emotional damage and suffered hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't agree with they did not give him a chance to due process. He didn't show up. Like, what does it say when you don't even show up to defend yourselves to your bosses? Hundreds of millions of dollars, too. Like, I don't know, man. I'm sure in the contract it stipulated some kind of moral clause, and he probably could have fought it. Maybe he could have won at the time. He chose not to. He waited to go and do the lawsuit route at the end, and I can't stand that. I absolutely can't stand it. I hate that he got fired for this, but he gave them the reason to do it. He really did. So I don't know, man. Bringing Brenda Tracy in the first place was his worst mistake, to be honest. That was the biggest mistake to begin with. Poor Mel. Anyway, we got a new helmet poll, guys. So I need you to vote on the new helmet poll. Here's our options. I put it out yesterday. We've got, and these are all your nominations. I got a couple people saying, like, why not this one? Why not that one? You guys give me the nominations, and then I whittle it down to 4. We got UCLA. We got the light blue Ole Miss, which you guys like better than the dark blue. We've got the Pitt script. Now, I was clamoring for Pitt to go back to this forever. Remember the helmet they were using? That uniform set, the colors, they sucked. And we've got Oklahoma State. Now, I chose this one. A lot of you guys like the Pistol Pete version better. I just don't like the cartoony flavor of it. I like my football teams to look tough, and that doesn't look tough. So those are our options. UCLA, Ole Miss light blue, Pitt yellow with the script, and Oklahoma State with the script Cowboys. And we've got a new addition to add to the family. You're not going to like this one. Oh, Clemson. Clemson came to the house. Let's put them next to our, let's knock the team out west, off to the west there, and add Clemson here next to our Buckeyes. And those two helmets together, man, those are warriors. I like that. I like that. That reminds me of a fun time the last time we met, doesn't it? That was a good one. That was a real good one. Love our helmet pulls. Love adding the new helmets. And, speaking about the team out west, check this out.
I don't really know what people think about that team out west. I don't know that everybody necessarily knows really what we're about.
I think people on the outside look at the uniforms, they see the buildings, they see the flash, and they think that Oregon is soft. Nothing could be further from the truth.
They're going to say, we're the hunt. We hunt this year. That's the mentality.
That's right. That ridiculousness is coming from Lanning. Lanning has self-glossed them, the team out west, which I think is the corniest thing anybody can do, is self-gloss themselves a nickname. You can't give yourself a nickname. A nickname has to come organically. And they try so hard. And their fans, I really like, but there is definitely a part of the Oregon mentality that they just want to fit in so bad as in the upper echelon of football. And they're right on the cusp of getting there. But just let it happen. Just get there first. And quit trying to push it. Oh, we're a blue blood. Quit trying to push yourself on it. It's going to happen. I believe it's going to happen. I think they're going to get there. I think they're going to be a real force to be reckoned with. But trying to push it before it gets here, trying so hard with the nicknames and we're tough. We're going to show you how tough. Just come in and win first, and you'll get all that respect. You're making a mockery out of yourselves with this. Like Lanning, who I got a lot of respect for, this team out west campaign and trying to make them more than they are. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And they can't stand the fact that people talk about them like they're soft, they're flash, there's no substance there. They hate it. I don't agree with any of that stuff that people say. A lot of people say that stuff. But when you do this kind of stuff, it adds to all that what the haters can say about you. And it clearly bothers you guys. So, I don't know, man. I think Lanning is doing you a disservice with this kind of crap. I have had absolutely no issue with Oregon fans since I started the show.
The Ducks are going to be a force in the Big Ten, and the other teams are probably going to start calling them that team out west because.
If you're an Ohio State fan, we want you to hate us.
Nobody's calling you that team out west. Who's calling Oregon that team out west? Oregon fans, I know some of you who watch every day. Do you want to be called that team out west? Do these guys speak for you? You're trying way too hard. Rivalries and hatred, that happens over hundreds of years. We fought a war with those folks up north over a shitty city. You're a little too far away for us to have that kind of hate. But furthermore, why do you want to have a relationship like that? We have enough dealing with them. It's all we can handle. We only want one of those kind of relationships. It's all day. It's every day. I don't want another. I enjoy you guys. I really do. And like I said, I dig the Oregon crew. I like those fans. They're really cool. The weird thing is they also got this kind of, like when I talked to my buddy Ryan out at Sports Chat 503, they got this mentality like they feel like they might not fit in with the Big Ten. Their stadium's smaller. They don't know if the Big Ten's going to fully accept them. Like, they're really worried about that. I think they fit in great. I really do. Nobody's calling them that team out west, unless it's like making fun of them. Like, now it's something that I just said it about that helmet when I kicked it down. Like, it's hilarious to me. Team out west. Got a couple of new uniforms, guys. UAB. What are we thinking here? I don't know how you could possibly have the nickname the Blazers and be any worse. Like, they're a dragon. That's their mascot. You could do so many cool things with that dragon, and instead you've gone this route. This looks horrible. It's horrible. Just terrible. We've got Wake Forest, who's gone a really classic. That kind of looks like Army to me, a little Purdue-y. I like that, though. Pretty new age, but classic new age. And then we've got the Hokies. Virginia Tech always just looks great to me. It looks great. And if you look in the numbers there, they got that brick pattern. Those buildings all around their campus got that same brick, old brick motif like that. Looks pretty good. I like the colors. And why I like Virginia Tech, the colors are so ugly that they're beautiful, just like my Cleveland Browns. I can relate. I can get behind that. So it turns out that having Julian Sayin in the class of 2024 and the guy coming in the class of 2025 named Tavian St. Clair has made it a little bit difficult to recruit a quarterback in the class of 2026. Some Buckeye fans aren't feeling too great about that. I don't think there's a way that I could possibly care less. Nobody's going to want to come in after those two, and that's totally understandable. But it is kind of comical when you look at the top 10 quarterback list. Today, Jonas Williams and Faison Brandon both committed, with Brandon going to Tennessee. Jonas Williams is going to go to Oregon. And this top 10 list is littered with guys that the Buckeyes were interested in and flirted with throughout the process. Jared Curtis, the number one quarterback in the class, was a big-time Buckeye lean before Corey Dennis left. Dia Bell grew up a Buckeye fan, sent me a picture of him with Cardell at the stadium. Absolute legit Buckeye fan. And I thought we were going to get him for a minute. He ends up going to Texas. Faison Brandon, definitely they wanted him, offered 9 of these guys. Brady Smigel, there was some interest there for sure, big time. Brady Hart, they offered at a camp. That was kind of a last minute kind of offer, a tentative offer. He ends up going up north. Will Griffin, they really liked out of Florida. He signs with the Gators. Billy Napier. Jonas Williams just committed today to Oregon. Troy Hoon, there was definitely some interest there. 9 out of 10 of these guys. And the one that they didn't offer, Ryder Lyons, who Chip went and saw in Folsom, California, when he was looking at that D2 safety prospect in the portal. Ryder Lyons is my favorite guy. We watched this film here. We're talking about an electric playmaker. I don't know why the Buckeyes weren't interested in him, but it sounded like they could have got him. They didn't. So who's left that's not on that board? One of them is Brady McWhorter. He committed to West Virginia. Another one, Brady Palmer. I think he was at camp and they kind of liked him. And I mean, they liked him enough to offer him, but he's got a little bit of a weaker arm. He was having a hard time at camp driving the ball down the field. And some people thought maybe they just won't take a quarterback at all in 2026. I think that this is the perfect opportunity to take a guy with really high upside in one department. Either he's got a great arm or he's a great athlete, or he's got both and is a little undersized like Levi Davis from Olentangy Orange. That guy's kind of the complete package. He's just 5'11", but he still might grow. And that's the other thing you don't know. These guys get on campus. Now, remember, they're taking a big class in 2026. We're talking upwards of 30 guys. So you can afford to take a chance on a quarterback like that and see if maybe he develops and it could be a superstar. Who knows? So take a guy with some super high upside and forget about looking at the guys at the top of the ranking boards, because you're not going to get any one of them coming in after Julian Sayin and Tavian St. Clair. It's just not going to happen. All right. Trey McNUTT made his announcement today. Trey McNUTT at Shaker Heights.
Why is Oregon the best fit for you? Man, it's just Oregon is different, man. Coach Lanning's different, and the energy there is different. They go for a night, and that's all I want, and we gonna make that happen.
All right, so the McNutt saga ends. He commits to Oregon, and that'll be the end of it, I'm sure. The last we'll hear of it, no visits, no flirting with anybody else. The deal has been struck. He has committed. He's going to Oregon, and that's it. I don't care if he comes and visits in the fall. That's probably not going to happen. But if it does, he's not going to flip to Ohio State. He's not wanted to go to Ohio State and made that clear for quite a long time. I don't know why he didn't just take him off the list. I assume that it was probably to keep people at bay so he wouldn't have to deal with it. You heard all the boos, right? You hear the boos there? Clearly, a lot of pressure for him to go to Ohio State, and he did not want to come to Ohio State. I am not shy about calling out the coaching staff when I think they've messed up on something in recruiting. As you know, they did not mess up here. This had nothing to do with Macareri. This had nothing to do with anything about the Buckeyes. This dude didn't want to go to Ohio State. That's just what it is. So it's over, and now we don't have to talk about it anymore, right? Right, guys? No more? All right, cool. All right, let's roll into my conversation with Dillon Davis, and I'll talk to you guys when he and I are done.
Yeah, sure.
All right, joining us again today on the show at Juck on Bucks, we got Dillon Davis, my guy from the Delaware Gazette, Buckeye beat reporter, been covering the team for Ryan Day's entire tenure. Dillon, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing great. Hectic day, but the right kind of hectic. Obviously being at the Woody this morning, coming home writing. Just enjoy being back in the flow of things. Again, hectic nevertheless, but the right kind of hectic for sure.
Absolutely. So we had practice Thursday, practice Friday. The fans were allowed in. How many fans came? What was the turnout?
It's difficult to project or to put a number on it because it extends all the way down the sideline of one of the fields. So it's hard to say how many people deep there are, and it goes all the way down the field. I would say there were probably a good 200 to 300 people there today, just to be safe, 200 on the safe side, which I don't remember exactly how many tickets they sold. So it definitely wasn't a sellout by any means. I don't think it was even a sellout yesterday when the weather was better. Still hot, but no rain in the forecast yesterday. But so definitely not a sellout, but decent turnout.
Right on. So we got to hear from Ryan Day on Thursday, Jim Knowles on Friday. You were at both press conferences. They got a lot of things to install in the offense, obviously. And you asked Ryan Day kind of a question in regards to that about the quarterbacks. What did you ask him?
Well, I just asked him, it seems to me that, going back to last year and how that position battle ultimately played out at quarterback and how long it took, obviously, all the way into the season. And we know that that's never ideal for any quarterback situation for that to extend to the season. So I kind of asked him, I'd be of the mindset that because there's a new offensive coordinator there, a guy calling plays for the first time, and even a new center, which, you have to have that takes time to develop that relationship with a quarterback and a center. And it's unique to, any other two-player relationship in football, really. So I kind of asked him the question, just does he feel more pressed to come to this decision quicker than he did last year? And again, I understand, preface that by saying that, of course he wants to find that, that quarterback as soon as possible. That behooves everybody. But it feels to me like maybe, he doesn't have as much time. That team can't afford to let this ride out too much, too long and into camp, and certainly not into the season. That's not even thinkable for that to happen again, just because Chip Kelly needs to start developing that rapport with whatever quarterback it is, and vice versa, that quarterback with Chip Kelly. Same thing with the center. Same thing that they're on with, to some new receivers as well, and whatnot, and just continue to develop that chemistry. Just so many things, so much newness in this offense. And I asked him, if he felt pressed to make that decision or come to that decision quicker. And I kind of understood, what the answer was going to be. And he said that, it's one of those things that just has to happen. You can't force it. And I understand you can't force it. It's one of those things that, it'll be decided when one of those guys decides it. And I get that. But, maybe you kind of crack down on the criteria you're looking for in order to make that decision. Maybe he doesn't have to check all 5 boxes. Maybe he needs to check 4 or 5 before I say, okay, then that's my guy and we're riding with him for right now. And that's not to say that you announce it a week from now and it still can't change, but, at least establish a pecking order and say, okay, this is my pecking order right now. This guy is clearly, in the lead in this race, and he can still lose it. You can go out and have a bad rest of camp and lose it. But for right now, he's the guy, and we're going to treat it as such as we go through our practices and start getting closer to that game week practice regiment. So, yeah.
So they're running currently on 2 fields with 2 offenses and 2 defenses. When are they going to, all 5 quarterbacks, are they getting about the same amount of reps right now?
I wouldn't say all 5 of them. Certainly Devin and Will Howard, those guys are getting the same amount of reps. And I would say Julian's getting more. He's getting more reps than, say, Aaron Nolan. So I'd say it's probably like a tier: Devin Brown, Will Howard, Julian on a second tier, and then everybody else from there. Just for what I've perceived it to be for right now. But with the 2 fields things, it's hard to keep track of all that because there's just everything's going on simultaneously. So.
Right. Do you know when it is they're going to pare that down and get together?
I don't, because it's unique. It's not something that I've seen them do a whole lot, and it's obviously it's really beneficial. Ryan's talked about it a lot, how beneficial it is for the team just to get all these reps, get these guys reps that otherwise wouldn't with if they're just running on one field. So I don't know when they'll pare that down. Usually, I would say by the end of next week is when it kind of starts to shift. You have the install period, which is obviously the beginning of camp. It's a lot of install stuff and, just guys finding their way and figuring out how to practice, and whatnot. And then it kind of starts to shift to more like, good against good, truly competitive, let's figure out who our dudes are and who we can ride with in the season. And I would imagine when that happens, I don't know. I don't think they'll stop practicing on both fields, but you'll get more of the good against good on the one field as opposed to, sending, half of your offensive line over to one and half of, of your potentially starting offensive line over to one and having half on another field. At that point, when they pare it down, it'll at least be good against good on the same field. So you'll have all the kind of the real players in this whole, picture on one field together.
Right. You've seen Devin for a couple of years now. Obviously you're very familiar with him up close and seeing him in practice and such. You've now seen Will Howard in the spring, in a couple practices here as we head into the season. I would say the majority of the folks that I'm seeing kind of report back who are in your position, who've seen a lot of these 2 guys, kind of there's a bit of a consistent opinion, and that is that maybe Will Howard struggles a little bit with the longer stuff. Devin struggles a little bit with the shorter stuff. Maybe he's a little bit more consistent of a passer, has a bit of a stronger arm. What are your takes just kind of from a skills perspective as someone who's seen a lot of really good quarterbacks up close? Break these guys down, strengths and weaknesses, just kind of comparing the 2 of them.
Well, I will say that maybe one of the things that I was talking to somebody about this today too, and this maybe isn't fair because it's still limited, sample size, but compared to quarterbacks in years past, so like when things don't look good with these quarterbacks, and I put them as I could loop them in this whole group there. When things don't look good with these quarterback group right now, I mean, it looks bad. There are times everybody has a bad day of practice. Every quarterback's just not going to have not going to be dialed in for, a day or whatever and whatnot. But, there's still plenty of flashes as to why they are who they are. When these guys are bad, it doesn't look good. And for whatever that's worth, that could ultimately mean nothing. But it just seems like, it's just glaring sometimes when things don't look good out there, how bad it looks. With that being said, today was a very good day for these quarterbacks. It was a very good day for these quarterbacks. I've heard some people talking about Will Howard and the deep ball and whatnot, and he had the best day of the quarterbacks by far, and it was because of him throwing the deep ball. I mean, he had 2 beautiful touchdown throws in the 7-on-7 portion, against pretty good coverage on both occasions as well. And he was consistent, making the throws that you have to make. Obviously those deep throws are, you have to hit them at a decent clip, but it's those short to intermediate throws you just have to be able to make, like clockwork, to keep the offense on schedule. So Will Howard had a really good day doing that. I'm not going to sit here and try to evaluate his deep ball. I've seen his tape at Kansas State, but I've not sit here and, did a deep dive into how Will Howard throws a deep ball. I know that he kind of took me by surprise. I don't know if maybe it was just this perception that I had, that was completely unfounded, but I didn't realize how strong of an arm he has. He has plenty of arm strength. That's not a question at all. So that's certainly no question. He can drive the ball down the field, and accuracy is a question for every quarterback, except for the true. That's what separates good from elite. That's what made CJ such a star, because he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks I've ever seen with my own eyes. And so, what Will Howard does for that, ultimately we'll see. But Will Howard, in terms of arm strength, can make every throw on the field. And I was maybe a little surprised by that because I wasn't sure that was the case. And Devin Brown's no different. I mean, Devin Brown can also make all those throws too. Devin Brown, probably didn't have the day that he would hope to have today. Is the best way to put that. He didn't have a great day. I think by all accounts, I don't think it's unfair to say he didn't have a good day. Now, of course, he did have the very last throw of practice before they blow the horn practice over. He had, one of the better throws of the day on a deep ball, a touchdown to Bryson Rogers, excuse me. That was a beautiful ball, dropped it right in a bucket against good coverage again. So, so he kind of redeemed himself there and, again, showed a flash of why, he's firmly in that race, but it wasn't a great day for Devin Brown by all accounts. And then there's Julian Sayin. So, and then
that's my next question.
after watching those two guys, and you watch Julian Sayin, and I'm not a quarterback guy. I'm not Quincy Avery. But watching Julian Sayin throw the football just is kind of different than watching the other two guys throw the football. It comes out of his hand cleaner, it seems like, with more zip. And it's just, I don't know. There's just something about watching Julian Sayin where I could, if I can't put, words to what it is, I can at least say, if I watch these three guys for 30 minutes throwing the football, I can, like, this guy's it just seems a little bit different for whatever reason. And Julian Sayin had a good day today. For my, for what it's worth to me, I thought he had the throw of the day. He had a seam route against just as tight a coverage as you're going to get. The defender actually tried to undercut the route, and the ball was thrown on a rope up the seam to a tight end, I believe, I recall. And the tight end didn't make the catch, but it's a ball he had to make, had to catch. And it's just a beautiful throw, and just reminds you of just a natural, probably still pretty raw, but natural arm talent that Julian Sayin has. And also, but one thing I noticed with Julian too in the 7-on-7 is, like, you can see him starting to get comfortable as well. He's decisive with the football. Maybe sometimes that's works to his detriment because he makes up his mind quickly, but he's not out there overthinking. You can tell that he's not overwhelmed by where he's at right now, which wouldn't be too crazy of an admission for a guy who's going into his first camp at a place like Ohio State, or even if he was still at Alabama, playing that level of football for the first time. He's not overwhelmed. I mean, mentally, he seems like he knows he belongs out there. He does belong out there, and I don't think he's a real player to start the season, but in some of those doomsday scenarios, for Ohio State season where things just don't, get off to a good start, or it just doesn't look right. Say they go to Eugene and, get beat, and again, quarterback play is just not up to snuff. I think Julian Sayin's natural arm talent and how competent he is already, I think he can still get to that point where, it maybe down the line it would be worth a thought to say, like, hey, do we put the kid in? Now, again, that's down the line, and hopefully for Ohio State, right, doesn't go that way. But so that's my take on the quarterbacks. Again, still very early, still tough to say because some guys are working with your third, fourth, fifth guys, in the receiver room, and a makeshift. I don't say makeshift offensive line, but not the five best offensive linemen on the team,
right? Pieced together,
different things like that, and and also sometimes in the 7-on-7 stuff, sometimes you force throws you wouldn't otherwise throw, just to try to make a play because it is 7-on-7. So, but right now I thought all three of them, had flashes today. I thought Will Howard was by far the best of the day. Certainly an encouraging sign. After yesterday, he looked, fairly pedestrian. So.
I really appreciate how brutally honest you are with that comment about, when it looks bad, it looks bad. And I think that's what, people want to know, you know what I mean? Because honestly, that's kind of the impression that I was getting, but I've not heard anybody come straight out and say that. So it is nice to hear, although I hate hearing it.
Yeah.
But
sure.
Ryan Day's press conference on Thursday, I heard 3 questions asked to him about Tegra Shabola, which I don't know. We talked about Tegra last time you were on, the Tegra and Carson situation at right guard. I guess I really like the fact that there are kind of 2 options there that, a little backup, a little bit of depth on the offensive line. But then it got me thinking about tackle behind Simmons and Fryer should something happen. Who do you think is the next man up at tackle should something happen there?
I would say, well, just from what I've seen so far at left tackle, the guy behind Josh Simmons is Austin, and I'm going to screw his name up.
Searveld?
Searveld. I've heard it 3 different ways, but anyways, he's he's been the guy at left tackle. If Josh Simmons is on one side of the field, Austin's been getting a lot of looks at left tackle there. So it seems like that might be a piece that they expect. They can somewhat count on as tackle depth. And then, obviously behind that, it could be interesting. I know Luke, they tried to have Luke Montgomery play some tackle. I'm not sure to what, degree they feel comfortable with that. So it could be very interesting. And it just goes back to the recruiting conversation we've had about, the lack of, impact depth there. It's one thing, they're struggling to find the dudes to put on the field and be game changers at that level, and forget talking about the depth aspect of it, because it's just not, they don't have a lot of depth there. So it could be problematic for sure. As it could be problematic if, if they decide to play Carson at right guard and, something happens to either him or Seth McLaughlin. I think Josh Padilla is that third center right now. And it seems like throughout these first two practices, Joshua Padilla is going to be that third center for now. If he's, whether or not he's ready to do that or not, I don't know. But if you're putting both those guys on the field at the same time, Hinsman and Seth McLaughlin, you're one injury from either one of those guys away from, probably having to slide Seth down to, I don't know. I guess that a lot still to be determined there. But depth in general, not good along the offensive line, and certainly not a tackle either.
Well, I guess the great news is Josh Simmons looks amazing, right?
Yeah.
My
sure.
gosh, dude.
Yeah.
Like a totally different guy.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what Josh Simmons can do this year, just with that year of experience at this level of football, combined with what he's done with his body and just how awesome he looks, just how slim but powerful still he looks. This could be a big year for Josh Simmons, and then with him and Donovan Jackson, we talked about it in the last conversation we had with him and Donovan Jackson on the left side. That's really something to work with. I know they have some questions along the right side, and they have depth questions as well. But if you can solidify that left side as a potential, pair of first team all Big Ten guys. And I'm a believer in Seth, and we know that he's, at the very least, he's played a lot of, quality football at the highest level. Now you're really working with something. So we talked about that. I think it's the offensive line is certainly still their biggest question, but I don't think it's problematic by any means, as long as injuries don't pop up, and because that could throw any position for a loop, but certainly at that one. But yeah, they got something in Josh Simmons. I'm really excited for him and excited to see what he does this year.
Yeah, I'm feeling bullish about this offensive line now. I think that the next time you get into practice, which I don't know when that's going to be.
Tomorrow.
You're not invited back this week. Are you
Tomorrow,
going back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something changed. I may or may not have heard some rumors of one outlet that I won't name, who maybe was not happy about fans getting access over the weekend and not us, and it got changed. So we I know we have access tomorrow for sure, and I believe Sunday as well. Although I won't be there Sunday, I have something I have to go do family wise. But so we'll be there tomorrow as well.
That's excellent. Happy to hear that something changed there. Yeah. But a week or so down the road, when we see, as we start to see a little more of things come together, I'm just really excited to see how this offensive line is going to start looking. Once they get to gelling and get some more of the install, I just feel really confident about this unit. I really do. I really like these guys. I like the experience, and it's just going to come down to staying healthy, I suppose, on the outside. So we know you're high on Brandon Inniss. You've been saying that all along, and I understand he looked really good on Thursday, as did Carnell Tate. What's your breakdown of the receivers in the first 2 days?
Well, yeah, Carnell Tate was definitely the man of the hour receiver-wise on Thursday. He had a fantastic day, and just remind you that the guy truly is flying under the radar. And I think people are just enamored with Jeremiah Smith, and rightfully so. I get it, and everybody just knows what a known commodity Emeka Egbuka is, and then there's Carnell Tate, in the middle of that. But Carnell, reminded a lot of people yesterday that were in attendance, certainly us and the media, that he's very much a player. He was a big time recruit last year coming in, and maybe he didn't have the a huge impact early on, but he's going to be a player this year, But it all ultimately comes back to Jeremiah Smith. And I know there are probably some people out there in this fan base, they're probably already rolling their eyes. Like, I know they're excited about Jeremiah Smith, but they probably roll their eyes because, they think that people are just pumping this kid up so much and whatnot. I can't understate that. Yes, there's a lot of feeling out and finding your footing as a freshman that, as a true freshman, that's still to come for Jeremiah Smith. I get that. But when I say that he's star ready, he is star ready today. The only thing that's going to hold Jeremiah Smith back this year is Ohio State's inability to throw the football if that ultimately comes to pass, and they don't throw the football at the rate that Buckeye fans expect that offense to throw the football. If they can get the football to him, he's already start ready. He's that good, and he had another big day today. Just to underscore that, during the 7-on-7 portion, it seemed like again it was kind of herky jerky with the quarterbacks, but every other completion was Jeremiah Smith. Now sometimes he was doing it against guys that aren't going to see the field this year, so take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. Although earlier in the day, we had a little bit of true freshman on true freshman crime. He lined up against Aaron Scott and absolutely mossed him. And look, it happens. Anybody, Denzel, Burke, IGP, you're going to get mossed in practice, whatever. That's fine. In my head, it kind of made me, laugh because that's the future of your program at those two positions. Aaron Scott's going to be a hell of a player, and probably not that far off from cracking the 2 deep now. If it wasn't for how deep they are.
Right.
Because he's not far from being ready to play, or at least seeing some time, as a true freshman himself. But anyways, Jeremiah Smith went up and got him on one. Jeremiah Smith had another great day today, and I hope I understand Ryan Day's leading the charge of trying to, dampen expectations a little bit, but
he's not doing a good job, to be honest. Like he lets it slip quite a bit, and I got to tell you, like, this is what I try to explain. So I talk to, other fan bases when I bring them up. Sometimes they'll watch, and sometimes and I just brought this up in yesterday's show. And the way I try to explain this best to them is using you guys, that basically the Buckeye media with freshmen always tries really hard to tamp down expectations because they don't want to put pressure on they try to look out for the guys.
Sure. Yeah.
They don't want fans like, hey, what happened? You guys have all thrown your hands up and said, I give up. Like, I give up. I can't do it with this guy. He's just too good. Yeah. And that's how I try to explain, like, when you see that, having followed the team and followed the guys that cover the team as long as I have, that's something I've never seen in all my time covering or watching, paying attention to things going on at Ohio State. It's just the people who cover the team, not covering for freshmen. Like, I just give up. And that's different.
I'll put it this way. Sorry, I'll put it this way. I'll just leave it at this. It's probably no other way, better way to say it. In my time being on this beat, I've seen Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison, and Emeka Egbuka all be true freshmen, right? And they've all shown flashes, especially Garrett Wilson immediately in camp, of why they were the recruits that they were, and why they have a chance to be really special. And Jeremiah Smith exceeds all of that. Like, so he's still better now today, 2 days into practice, than any of those guys were that I've seen with my own eyes. I've seen how good they were the moment they got on campus, and even Jeremiah Smith is still somewhere past that. So, I mean, it's not hype anymore, folks. It's real. I just hope they can get him the ball on a regular basis, because it's a real thing. He is truly coming. So,
yeah. And I gotta say, I brought this up the other day too. I get the feeling that a lot of people, I don't know, Carnell Tate, like, he wasn't disappointing as a freshman. Like, I keep hearing this, and he caught 23 balls. He played in 11 games as a true freshman, and they weren't garbage minutes. I mean, he was in the game. Didn't disappoint me at all. And I think he's absolutely on the trajectory of being, that next dude. But yes, you're right. He is, he's sandwiched in between Emeka, who's first round-ish receiver heading out, and JJ. So not getting a whole lot of pub, but it was nice to see him come out and kind of remind everyone, like, yeah, excuse me, I'm that dude too. So I really liked hearing that. But onto the defensive side of the ball. Thursday and Friday, Sonny Styles was with Cody as the number 1 at will. Gabe Powers and CJ Hicks were the 2s. Gabe Powers, I guess I heard, looked really good. Even kept up with Judkins on a wheel route, which everybody was really surprised by. But Jim Knowles at his press conference on Friday said that Sonny and CJ are essentially bracketed, neck and neck. So don't take anything away from Sonny running number 1. Also talked about how good CJ was at attacking and blitzing, said Sonny is too. And he said that he wants to continue to try to find ways to get the 3 linebackers out there together. And he said he's looking to incorporate that in the defense a significant amount. A lot of people don't like the idea of pulling Jordan Hancock off the field, let alone a significant amount. Where do you come out on that?
Well, I think my answer to that would kind of tie into something else Jim Knowles said today about, kind of maybe expanding on what they've done for 2 years now. Like obviously in year one, they were super aggressive and got torched a lot for big plays. Last year, they maybe weren't quite as aggressive and achieved the ultimate goal of preventing yards and points, but maybe weren't, didn't have as many of those big game-changing plays, the sacks and the plays in the backfield and things like that. So, in my opinion, like I don't want to see Jordan Hancock come off the field either, but I think there are situations where, you'd want to have 3 linebackers on the field. I mean, it just makes you that much more diverse in what you can do and what you can throw at offenses. So, I don't look at it as, like, by doing that they're trying to diminish Jordan Hancock's role, in that defense at all. I just think it gives you another bullet in the chamber, to throw at an offense. So I think it's a fantastic development when you start talking about being able to walk CJ Hicks or Sonny Styles up to the line of scrimmage. You're starting to at that point, you're starting to graduate into the stuff that you see on Sundays in the NFL, that kind of defensive stuff. Let me tell you, folks, there are very few offensive coaching staffs that are capable of handling those kind of things if you start mixing that in with what you do with your base looks and things like that. So nobody wants to see Jordan Hancock come up the field. He's a great player, and I don't think that means that he's necessarily going to. What it is, it's just another thing that they can throw at an offense, and that's exciting stuff when you talk about those two athletes being those guys. I mean, last year, CJ Hicks reminded me, not that he was on this trajectory, but just watching him when, talking about like when Knowles said that he, the way he attacks, he reminds me of Micah Parsons. He looks like Micah Parsons. He's built like Micah Parsons. So again, get that guy around the line of scrimmage and let him just raise hell. Same with Sonny Styles. That's a huge development for that defense. And if you take what they already have, in their base in that 4-2-5 look with the 5 defensive backs on the field, and then you can mix that in there with 3 linebackers on the field, or against teams that say want to try to force that run and have 3 linebackers on the field. Different things, man. That they could be so multiple on defense that it would be scary considering what they just did last year and how good they were last year.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's so exciting to me. Like these guys, I'm a big play your freaks kind of guy. Yeah. I want to see them out there. And these are 2 of the freakiest guys on the team. Get them out there. Let's see what this looks like. I can't wait. But somebody asked him that, I think it was Austin Ward in the press conference, talking about CJ, talking about Sonny, mixing up pressures. Isn't this kind of a jack position? Mm-hmm. And Knowles absolutely rejected that and said, no. If anything, he said, I don't think that's the way to go. If anything, I want to go the other way. The defensive line is our strength.
Yeah.
I don't want to pull one of them off. I might go with 5. What's your take on that? I was surprised to hear that for a couple of reasons. I'll get to why in a second, but I want to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I think the whole jack position, obviously, it took on a life of its own when it was first kind of talked about, and Jim first started throwing it out there, and people started understanding what it was and what it would mean and who could play it and whatnot. It's a position that's very unique in that, like, you have to have the right kind of guy for it. And they try. We saw that they tried to force Jack into that kind of into that, and it just wasn't what best served Jack's skill set, and we see when Jack gets back to his natural skill set, what he is and whatnot. So you have to find the right guy that, not just the right guy to play that position, but not taking something away from another position as well. Again, Jack could have turned out to be a serviceable Jack, player, but then you're taking away from what he is, just a natural pure edge rusher. So, I mean, there's that as well. In terms of having 5 on the field at the same time, I'd be a little bit surprised if that actually comes to fruition. But it's certainly a tantalizing prospect, and that's not to say that at times, again, I think this year it's going to be a huge jump with this defense in terms of everybody's been in this scheme for 2 years now. The guys that have been there, and the guys who are going to play this year, they've been in there for 2 years now, going into a 3rd year now. They understand so much of what they're asked to do and everything, that they feel comfortable with, where they're completely comfortable with what their base is, and now they can really start to experiment and do some of those fun things that would truly just confuse the hell out of a quarterback. So we'll see. Again, I'd be a little bit surprised if it goes to that extent, but I did like hearing what he said about the defensive line being the skill set or the strong suit of that defense, and not taking away from that. So whatever that ultimately looks like, we'll see. But again, just super excited because just the way he talks, you can tell that that they're working on a lot of different things, that whether we see it at all come the season, or we only see it a little bit come the season, just the fact that they're able to mix those things in, and it's just something that's sitting there if they ever need it. It's only going to make for a better defense.
Talking about the defensive tackles, he said he wants 6.
Yeah.
So after Ty and Tyleek, somebody brought up Jason Moore and Hero Canoe. And then he said, Caden McDonald is also ready. And you asked him about your dude, Taiwan Malone. Now, not the first time you've brought this guy up. You really, really like him. What is it about him that you really like so much? And what was his response when you brought him up?
Well, I mean, the first thing is you just look at Taiwan and you say he belongs, at that level. So he's huge, he's massive, and one of the first things that, I mean, in all honesty, the first day of spring practice when he kind of stood out to me, I did not walk into the Woody expecting that I was going to watch some Taiwan Malone today. It was he made me watch him. He just how fast he was getting off the ball at that size, knowing his background as a baseball player and the athleticism that he has. That's what stood out to me. Now ultimately, I don't see the things behind the scenes, consistency. We always talk about. We hear these guys all the time. They have the skill set to do it, but consistency, I don't know those things and whatnot. But just in that moment, that's what made me pay attention to him, and that's continued into camp, obviously, because he's been routinely with the twos, with that second group of guys. So he's obviously firmly in the mix, to be that fifth or sixth guy if they want to get the six guys. Maybe not the fifth. I think the five is probably the five. I think he said they have a pair and a spare for sure right now. It seems to me like I would have to believe that they're at least 4 deep right now. I think Hero and Jason Moore are right there. And then judging by the way he talks about Caden McDonald, it sounds like Caden McDonald's right there too. So it sounds like they're well on their way to having 5 firm, and that's whether they can get to that 6th guy or not, we'll see. And that's where Taiwan maybe comes in there.
Right.
But yeah, I just think with this athleticism at that size, and Jim Knowles even, kind of referred to it. He said, let's see what happens when we get on pads. Let's see what happens, because it's a physical position. And then he made the comment too that like they become accustomed to defensive tackles in that defense making tackles, not just eating up space, eating up blocks, actually like making plays. And so, it kind of suggested to me that Taiwan Malone just can't be a big body out there, but that's where his athleticism comes in. And I say like, well, if this guy, is firmly, in that mix, or at least pushing for playing time now, with that athleticism, I couldn't imagine him being nothing more than a space eater. I think he's going to be the 6th guy just from 2 days of practice and seeing where he's at in the rotation and the reps that he's getting, hearing Jim Knowles say that, because there are certain tells, even before I finished asking the question, when I said Taiwan Malone's name, he was taking a drink of water, but he started nodding his head before I'd even asked my question, but I mentioned Taiwan's name, which tells me it's already a guy that in his own head, like he knows, like, hey, yep, that's a guy, and he, like, almost like he was like confirming, like, yeah, that's a guy you should be asking about right now. So I think he's going to end up being the 6th guy. Now, you want 6. Are you going to play 6? Maybe not, but you want 6 in case, injuries, or maybe they play, sparingly, but you want 6. So if that means he gets on the field, I don't know, but I think he's going to end up being that 6th guy. And you'll see him at least a little bit on the field. So
talking about his tells, first off, I love watching this guy. I love watching him talk. You can see the wheels turning, but when somebody asked him about Arvell Reese and he just casually says, I was just thinking about that today. It's just like, I'm sure he was. He was probably thinking about all these questions today at some point in the day. Sure. He's just like a mad scientist of defense. But it's so entertaining to me. But Mitchell Melton was getting some reps with the ones. I love Mitchell Melton. I love his story. I think that's awesome. He played great, really flashed in the spring game. And when we talk about Caden and Kenyatta kind of being that 2 and 3, maybe not. And my thought was, I think we're going to see some more Edric Houston. I think we're going to see some more Mitchell Melton. This defensive line, to me, is what separates really great Buckeye national championship contending teams of the past and this team right here. It's so deep. You got waves of defenders you can bring in. I just love it. Really exciting stuff. It's one of the most exciting parts of this team to me. But moving on to the secondary, when we talk about the JJ reaction, and I point you guys out about that, it's kind of how I try to explain it to other folks. Like this is just something that I'm seeing that's so different. I do get a little bit of that feel with Caleb, and it's just a little bit different the way people are talking about him, coaches, people that cover the team, close by the team. You said to me yesterday he's just a delight to watch. Jim Knowles today talked about him, a coach's dream. What's your general impression when you watch him out there? I heard somebody say yesterday, it's like he has spidey senses in real life. Yeah.
So, I mean, the guy is just everywhere, making plays everywhere. going back to what Jim Knowles said today, I think is probably the most telling thing, because we've all seen, he obviously down in Alabama being the SEC Freshman of the Year, All-American, things like that. We've all seen on the field what Caleb Downs is. Like he's a very good, naturally, gifted physical body out there as safety. We know that. What's most telling to me, though, is what Jim Knowles said today. And this isn't the first time that he's been called this, but Jim Knowles said he's a pro. Very matter-of-factly said he's a pro. Matt Guerrieri said the same thing back in the spring when, we got the chance to talk to him for the first time about Caleb Downs. He said the same thing, that this guy's a pro, that he's just a monster in the film room, and that it pushes him to be, better as a coach for fear of being shown up by Caleb Downs, because that's how prepared Caleb Downs is. So you take the guy that we've seen his physical abilities on the field last year, and then you take that same guy and say that he's going to be the most prepared player on the field as well. And you got the makings of, a future first round draft pick. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And that's not hyperbole. That's not hyperbole at all, because we saw it on the field as a freshman, and he's only going to get better with experience. You've got guys raving, and it's not just, it's not just fluffing a guy up. Obviously, Ohio State coaches don't do that about these guys. They're pretty brutally honest about these guys. When they say multiple guys, that coach him, say he's a pro. He's a pro, in the film room. He's a pro on the field. And rave about how smart he is and how prepared he is. The guy is just special. He's a special dude. You see it out on the field. That's why you talk about how he has spidey senses. He's everywhere. He makes plays all over the field because he is prepared. He understands where he's supposed to be all the time. He understands where other guys are going to be. He understands what offenses are going to try to do, what everything means. That's you hear coaches talk about all the time. When you're prepared, you can play fast. You don't have to think. When you have to think, it slows you down. So you're allowed to play fast when you're prepared. Nobody's going to be more prepared than Caleb Downs, and that's why he's everywhere. That's why he makes all the plays he does. He's special. And you mentioned the J.J. Smith thing, and I tell people that's not hyperbole. Like, the guy is that good. He's as advertised. You don't need to see it, we saw him in the spring too, but you don't need to see it for more than a few sessions of practice to see, like, that guy's the real deal. He's very good. He'll be an All-American at Ohio State. He might be a Thorpe Award winner. He'll be a first-round draft pick. Like, it's real. Go ahead and pencil it in as if he as if he was an All-American last year, and whatever, just penciled in. Ohio State has one of the best players in the country defensively in their secondary, and Caleb Downs. That's a real thing. So you can take that to the bank.
But Dillon, if a guy transfers to your school, right, gives you 2 years, we got him for 2. That's great. He does everything right. Coach's dream, doing all this for you. He wants the ball in his hands. He's made it clear. There's a lot of people against this. I'm not. I'm for it. I think he can win the Heisman. I think he wants to. Where do you stand?
He has been practicing returning punts, so I will say that, like, he has and he did it at Alabama, so that's that's a possibility, and that's certainly one of those aspects of winning a Heisman if you're going to be a defensive first guy that does that, as we've seen in the very few occasions of guys who've had a chance to actually do it, or at least made a run at it. So he's going to do that, and I'm fine with him returning punts for sure. I'd rather see Caleb Downs back there than Emeka. And I think that's probably. We've seen Brandon Ennis back there too. So, but I'm fine with Caleb Downs returning punts. If you want to find a way to get him the ball 4 or 5 times in a game, I'm fine with on offense. I'm fine with that as well. I'm fine with that. The whole notion of him, being a running back per se, I don't think it's real. I think it's real in the sense that, like, they're prepared to do that. I know it's real in the sense that they've had that conversation, and I know it's real that was part of his recruitment to Columbus. I know all of that for a fact is real. Do I think it's a real possibility unless there's a disaster situation that breaks out in that running back room? No. But if you want to find a way to get him, 4 or 5 gadget plays to get him the ball in his hands because of how special of an athlete is, I have no problem with that. Because for one, he's proven that he's really tough. So he can handle, the burden that comes with taking some of those snaps and getting hit there and then having to turn around and go do that defensively. But even with that being said, it only takes one one bad tackle or one hip drop, which I guess they're illegal now, one hip drop tackle, and the next thing you know, you've lost, arguably the best safety in football because you were trying to get him the ball on offense, especially with all the playmakers they already have on offense. So I guess I didn't really answer your question. I'm sitting in the fence, shame on me. But I guess my answer to you would be if I saw it, for a handful of plays 2 or 3 times a game, then fine. I wouldn't really bat an eye at it. Do I hope that they, try to do that? Not necessarily, because I just think Caleb Downs getting the ball in his hands isn't going to make or break whether this offense can, carry its load along with that defense to go potentially win a national championship. If there's – look, now you got me going off here. So coaches will always deny that, when there's a guy in a Heisman campaign, that they don't try to get him, an extra touchdown, or they don't try to get them, a little bit of extra stats, with the understanding in the back of their head that, this guy's trying to win the Heisman here. And they always deny that and say, oh, we're just trying to win the game, or blah, blah, blah. And I say bullshit, I've never believed that for a second. That's not even that's not crazy, because there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, we're up 3 touchdowns, in the fourth quarter. I'm going to try to get this guy another touchdown, because he's trying to win a Heisman right now. So in situations like this, if Caleb Downs is having a great year defensively, and you find ways where you might be able to get him an end around, in the red zone to get him a touchdown in a game that you probably feel like you're comfortably going to win already. Sure, fine, whatever. But I hope that they're not. I hope they would script that into their offensive game plan. Put it that way.
Yeah. Got you. No, I mean, hey, I do a college football show. Part of the college football show, I talk about the best programs in the country. I came out with a ranking of the top programs in the country. One of the things that goes into these rankings are the Heismans that a program has. That's just part of it. It's part of the deal. It's part of the that's part of the reason I love college football. Things like that. We haven't had one in a while. I want one. This crop of quarterbacks sucks this year at the top. I don't mean that. I mean, compared to a lot of years,
it's not
a crop of quarterbacks that's okay, you know what I mean? This is a real possibility. And I went through this whole thing. There was a time when football fans used to want fun and be irritated when coaches would have this bubble wrap mentality, is what I call it, with players like a Caleb Downs. Well, we can't do that. We can't. He might get hurt. He's a safety. He's a headbanger. You know what I mean? And now, fans, when I say this, I'll get a bunch of comments you're crazy. And that's my whole thing. All of a sudden, fans have become this mature sect of folks worried about injuries. I want fun, man. I'm a football fan. I'll let the coach worry about that.
That's fandom, right? That's the fun part of it. For one, it's one thing you said is absolutely true. Is who are the Heisman favorites this year? Who can you honestly point to and say this guy has a really good chance to go win the Heisman? It's not usually every year you can point to 3, 4, as many as 5, 6 guys and say these guys, unless something goes terribly wrong, they're going to be in New York, or they're going to have a chance to be at least a finalist and be up for the award. And who are those guys this year? That's when
Carson Beck and Dillon Gabriel and Quinn Ewers are the guys at the top. These are really good quarterbacks. These aren't dynamos. You know what I mean? These aren't these aren't the Calebs. You know what I mean? Caleb Williams and it's not that type of guys. So this is the year that
it's a fun conversation. It's a fun conversation. Like you said, watching football is supposed to be fun. Being a Buckeye fan is supposed to be fun. And it's a fun conversation to have. I understand again, not one of the, obviously nobody wants the guy to get hurt, but at the end of the day, it would be fun to watch. And like you said, if you're going to do it with anybody, this is a safety who played strong safety last year. So he's used to being up in the box, in the, super physical SEC. He's going to play more of the adjusted, so, if anybody's built to do it, he could handle it. So.
Absolutely. Dillon, thanks so much, man. You got anything else to add from practice?
No, I think that's about it. We about covered it. Looking forward to seeing what we get tomorrow. And then really, next week when they get the pads on, then it'll really start to get real. You'll really start to be able to anybody who's played football and certainly hear coaches talking about it. That's when guys will start to separate themselves, and when camp really starts to wear on those guys, and we'll see who responds there. So I'm looking forward to getting into next week. But I appreciate you having me. Always happy to join. Enjoy your show. Happy for your success. You're moving up, and I'm glad to see that. So I appreciate you.
Thanks so much, bro. I'm just having a blast. I really appreciate you. Thanks so much for joining me today, and we'll talk to you hopefully next week again. Dillon sure is a talker, man. Always love his insight and appreciate him coming on. Dude's the best. At Dillon Davis 56, if you want to follow him over on Twitter. He is going to come back next week and talk to us about getting some access to the quarterbacks. They're going to have a chance to talk to all of them. We got a press conference from Chip Kelly coming. So practice Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They're going to be off on Monday, back at it Tuesday. And Tuesday afternoon, that means there's just 20 practices left. So We're almost there, guys. We are almost there. I grind really hard to put out a weekend show every weekend because when I first started this 6 months ago, I was very irritated. Not enough content on the weekend. And I'd have to recycle things from earlier on in the week. So I always make sure I do put out this weekend show. And if you are watching this on Menace, I just wanted to give you guys a taste of the weekend show. Maybe you're not familiar with my show yet, but this will air moving forward only on Juck on Bucks, as well as my live shows. So if you like it, if you appreciate the work and the content I'm putting out, please do subscribe to me over at the Juck on Bucks channel as well. And I appreciate you guys so much. I will talk to you soon. Check me on podcast, all the platforms. I'm there. See you guys later. Juck on Bucks out.